Now we approached to the third stage of self-directed learning, and this stage is dedicated to reflection and self-evaluation. And on this stage, educator helps learners to engage into the evaluating process and to track their progress to the learning goals. And one of the most widespread category of methods which you can use on this stage is the category of reflective diaries. I don't know what kind of kid were you. If you were one of those who had a secret diary in childhood. I had. Every day I wrote in the diary what happened to my dolls today, what new video I watched, what happened when we met with friends outside of the school or outside of house. And I stopped to write this diary only when I was in the middle school. And I opened this as a tool for myself only when I became an educator. And I also learned that the reflective educational diary, which we use in education, originates not from education, but from psychotherapy. Imagine that in psychotherapy, it was created and used as a very effective method for people who struggle with depression. It considers to be very effective because when people write down their thoughts, even if these thoughts are negative, and they reflect on their thoughts, and they have a kind of a dialogue with themselves on paper, it helps them to overcome difficult states of mind. Slightly from psychotherapy, this method moved to education. Of course, it is simplified here, but still it's a very, very helpful reflective tool, which help people to work with their own ideas, to have a kind of a dialogue with their mind, to overcome difficulties in education, especially if the topic or the theme that they faced with seems to them problematic, or if the learning process seems for them difficult. So learning diaries, they really help learners not only to reflect and have new ideas, see new ideas, come up with new ideas, but it also really much helps to track their progress and to evaluate it. So I will share with you several examples of reflective diaries in this video, and we even will try one on practice so you will understand how do you feel with this tool. Are you okay with this method? Is it valuable for you? The first one is called a simple reflective diary. Why is it simple? Because it offers learners only 4 simple questions. So you will offer for your learners to have a separate notebook for this diary and to write there every day or every 5 days or even once per week answers to 4 questions. First, what kind of learning goal they had for this period? It is good if your learners will write down their learning goals for every week, but not all adult students really do it. Most of the adult students think that they can memorize everything that they want to learn, so they don't need to write their learning goals down. But of course, adults are quite busy people, and time after time they forgot what I wanted to learn this week, what was my little goal for this particular day. So the first question is, what was your learning goal for this learning period? So you are trying, with this question, you are trying to get your learner back to the present moment, to his present learning goal. Then you ask your student to, your learner to reflect on the sources of knowledge he used during this week or several days, the process of learning he has chosen, and the successful points of learning. It is possible to keep this diary confidential or make it public. In the second variant, learners write it as a live journal, and reading journals of others from the course. Or it can be like reading diaries from those people who are your group members in the course, or you can make this, you can offer to learners make these diaries publicly in general. And it helps other people by reading the insights of the group members to come up with new insights for themselves. And what it also helps, it helps to motivate your learners to keep learning. Because when they write and they know that somebody will read their thoughts and ideas, they keep more responsibility for their learning process. When they see that someone comments, and even if it's a question about their ideas or thoughts, or someone may not be agree, but somebody comments, that means for the learner that his ideas are interesting, that his ideas are valuable for the others. And this public journal in this case will increase motivation for learning. Another example of the learning diary is called learning log. This method offers learners to keep a record of all independent study they do using the log sheet. Each day, they should explain what they did and evaluate their activity. Learning log is something similar to my diary from a childhood, which I described to you earlier. You write every day, but here not about everything, but about your learning. It helps to track everyday progress, and it also increases motivation. The third example of a learning diary is my favorite one. It's called a springboard. In springboard, you will offer your learners a starting point of reflection. And springboard is a method which can be used for everyday reflection. When adults have tasks to reflect on their learning, sometimes they have difficulties with the starting point. Start to reflect about what? How to start to reflect in general? What should be my first thought, first trigger thought of the reflection, for the reflection? So in a springboard method, you give them all these starting points and make a creative process interesting and adventurous in advance. The starting point can be a statement, for example, a quote from a movie or from a book, or just a quotation from a very famous educator or a scientist. Or it can be a question, or it can be an unfinished sentence. By the general rule, if you give your learners a starting reflecting point in a form of a statement, they will reflect mostly on facts. And because statement produces thoughts. But if you give your starting point a springboard in the form of a question, then most probably learners will produce thoughts about emotions, not just ideas, but emotional reflection of what happened, what do they feel about some particular educational concept or experiment or whatever they are reflecting on. So based on these starting points, which you can give them every day, for example, today you give them a quote and ask them to reflect on this quote, or next day you will give them a question. So based on them, a learner should write 1 page of reflection every day. This method is used as an independent one, so you can recommend starting a whole new notebook for it, where each day of the course, your learners will have its own reflective springboard. Example of statements I use in adult education course you see now on the slide. And I want you to pause this video for about 3 minutes and try to write as much as you can as some reflection based on the first question from the list. What 3 things you want to implement in your programs for adults, but still scared to? Did you find this springboard question and your reflection valuable? Imagine how the level of your professional reflection can improve if you use it every day during at least 1 month. You can give learners 1 statement, or you can give unfinished sentence or questions for diary reflection after each segment of your educational course, or at the end of every day of the workshop which you lead. Or if your course is really large and it lasts about the semester, then you can give the starting points for reflection every week. But as you know, in self-directed learning, our learners read a lot and watch a lot. So they can watch interviews with experts, they can watch educational movies, they can read a lot of articles and books, and there is a group of reflective diary methods that are dedicated especially to working with text or to working with movies. And here are 2 examples. The first one is called double diary. Ask learners to use a separate notebook for this diary, or they can make an electronic version. And ask them to divide a sheet of paper into 2 columns. In the left column, it is supposed to outline those parts of the text or a movie which attracted their special attention. In the right column, they need to write comments on the quotes marked in the left column. And the comments will be about why have this quote caught attention, or why this segment of the lecture, this video, or of the text attracted your attention. And what does it make you think about? What are your ideas? What are your reflections? Even now, when you are watching this lecture, you also can do this kind of job and make this kind of reflecting diary. If you take 1 sheet of paper, divide it into 2 columns, and in the left one, you will write what ideas from everything that I tell now attract your attention, what is interesting for you. And you can write down some quotations for this video lecture. And in the right column, you can write everything, all the thoughts and insight and all the reflection. And believe me that watching video lectures with the help of this double diary will be much more effective than just listening, just watching a lecture and listening to the expert. Working with diary is always more effective. Another example is a diary with reaction. It is the name of the method, and this type of reflective diary involves completing tasks for the text proposed by the educator. For example, you give links to some additional articles. So to every article, you can give a separate task for a diary with reaction. And examples of these tasks can be: choose 3 ideas in the text which you disagree with, and write, why do you disagree with that? Find 1 hidden message in the text. Note this message and reflect on this message. Or read the title and the first paragraph, write down 2 ideas that you already know on this topic, at least 2 questions that you want to find answers to in this text. Write down the answers when you find them out and record at least 3 ideas that you did not expect to meet. It is very good if this kind of diary also will be public, because if all the participants of your group work with similar text or with the same text and they work independently, then it will be very interesting for them to read the ideas of each other and hidden messages, for example. If group members are working on different topics within one theme, choosing their own learning process, it is again very useful to leave this diary publicly so that all the group members could read it as you do it in LibJournal. So almost in every diary method, I give you a recommendation to make it a public thing, because it really increases motivation of adult students and increases their progress. And finally, when you approach to the end of the course, you can come back to learning contracts you signed with your students and to the personal learning plans. What is recommended is to organize a group discussion and a group evaluation of plans and contracts. Are they complete? Why yes and why not? Are students really happy with the learning path that they have chosen? Why yes and why not? And what are their results at the moment? Or you can ask your learners to write a reflective essay where they will evaluate how they learned and what they have learned. And reflective essays always have an introduction where the speaker of this essay or your learner shares what the overall focus of the reflection will be. The body of the reflective essay explains how the learner has changed and what he has learned. It also explains what things caused this change. And in this part, you can advise your learners to give a lot of specific examples. And in the conclusion, the learner sums up how he or she changed. And even more, it is better if the learner emphasizes the difference between him in the beginning of the learning process in the past, him now after the learning process, and who he can become in the future when he stops the course, go back to work, or go back to his ordinary life. What will be how this learning process and this learning outcomes will change him as a personality and as a professional. And what is important is don't forget that the process of the self-directed learning, in the process of the self-directed learning, educator plays the role of the facilitator, which means that you assist and you create appropriate environment for learning and for self-evaluation. But people who are responsible for the learning process and for its outcomes, first of all, are learners. And for them, it is sometimes important to remind that in the case of reflective diaries, you need self-control. You guys need some self-pressure even sometimes, because you need to structure your learning process. And such methods as reflective diaries and all the evaluative methods which help in self-directing learning, they show how important they are only after a month of trials. So these methods will not show you tomorrow your outcomes or their effectiveness. You need to practice them. You need to practice them weeks and months. And after that, you will see your progress. you will see how much you changed because it was your learning path and it was your progress. And don't forget about that, because you in the self-directed learning, you as an educator, you are a facilitator, you create the environment, you help, but who is responsible for the learning path and for the outcome is a learner.